We're all looking for the best and cheapest places to retire, and when we all do our research, we all end up in Mexico or Thailand, and they both have great weather and a low cost of living, so I get it. But we all end up retiring in the same places. That causes local prices to rise as the tourists pour in, and that means that the best and cheapest places to retire often end up pricing themselves out of the competition. So maybe you don't like the crowds, maybe you want to travel somewhere off the beaten path, or maybe you just want a little bit of adventure as you try to retire on a budget. Well, here are 9 countries that you can retire cheap that you might not have considered before. And we're going to discuss some of the cool things about each country. We're going to discuss the residency programs or the retirement visas that they have available. And we're going to discuss the benefits of moving to each country, including some of the healthcare services that they have available. So let's go traveling. The first country on the list is Uruguay. You might not have thought too much about Uruguay because it is such a small country on the coast of South America, wedged in between Brazil and Argentina. However, Uruguay is often called the Switzerland of South America due to its political stability and high quality of life. When it comes to places to live, Uruguay offers the chance to live on the Atlantic coast and spend your time surfing, or meandering through the bustling capital of Montevideo, or you can simply spend your time relaxing in the countryside, overlooking rolling hills and vineyards. Uruguay offers their Pensionado visa, which is great because it doesn't technically have a minimum age requirement to it. All it requires is that you have some kind of pension or retirement income coming in of at least $1,500 a month. When it comes to the benefits, Uruguay has a lot of new resident-friendly programs available. For example, you can purchase property, you can also work or study while you're there, but most importantly, I think, are some of the tax advantages that they offer to new residents. For example, you can have your first 10 years there with tax-free income, and then after that, you would pay a 12% rate on your income. So I think that's a great option if you want to move there and keep building and growing for those 10 years. Especially if you think you're not going to be living there for any longer than 10 years. The other option, however, is if you don't want that 10-year tax-free window, is that you can automatically just have a 7% income tax for life. So also a great option, I think, especially if you think you want to live there long term. And when it comes to your healthcare options, there are actually some high quality options available, including English-speaking staff in the hospitals in Montevideo. Now, they do have a private healthcare system called the Mutualista, and I saw quotes online for this for about $70 a month, which is pretty reasonable. There's also a public healthcare option available, and that has become more efficient and less crowded as the Mutualista has developed over time. So some decent options there, but let's head over the ocean, over the Adriatic Sea, and let's find ourselves in the second country, Albania. Albania is north of Greece on the Adriatic Sea. It's the perfect place to learn one of Earth's oldest languages, Albanian, with roots dating back 2,000 years, preserving parts of ancient Illyrian, the language of the prehistoric folks that lived in that region. In Albania, you'll find rugged mountains, gorgeous beaches, and endless caves and waterfalls to explore. Now, most expats will likely end up in the capital city of Tirana at first, but the country has both inland towns to explore and cities right on the sea. Now, Albania does have a retirement visa for anyone over the age of 55. You just have to show proof of accommodation, your health insurance, a criminal record report, and you have to provide a statement of why you want to live in Albania. And they don't require a lot as a minimum income, which is really nice. You just have to show that you have an income of at least about $13,000 per year. Now, there are some really nice benefits to retiring in Albania as well. For example, you don't pay any taxes on any foreign pensions. You have the option to get permanent residency, which that can lead to citizenship. And Albania isn't quite as developed as the rest of Europe quite yet, but I see it getting there in the future. So it might be a good place to set up shop before it picks up steam. In terms of healthcare in Albania, there are affordable options and you can get private insurance for under $500 per year, but it's really probably only going to be good in the capital city. And honestly, if you're going to get like a major surgery, you're probably going to end up flying to Italy or Greece for something like that. And speaking of leaving Albania and heading to a country nearby, let's talk about the third country that you can retire cheap, Georgia. Whether you want to live on the coast of the Black Sea or in the capital of Tbilisi, Georgia may have the lifestyle you're looking for. Georgia is known as the birthplace of wine, according to the latest archaeological evidence, to the grapevine being domesticated 8,000 years ago and converted into wine. A great place to live, Tbilisi means the warm place in Georgian, since it was founded with the initial discovery of their hot springs in the 5th century AD. Now, if you're more interested in spending time with the Black Sea, head for the port city of Batumi and enjoy your time on the city's waterfront promenade. Now, when it comes to retiring in Georgia, there's no true retirement visa that they offer, but they do have the D5 immigration visa that, in a way, acts like a retirement visa. The one requirement in it is that you need to invest $100,000 in Georgian real estate. So there is that upfront cost, but once you live there, it is a cheap place to retire. And that is a visa that can be renewed yearly up until 6 years when you are finally granted permanent residency. And then after 10 years, you can actually get citizenship, provided you can actually show that you have sufficient knowledge of things like Georgian history, law, and language. Now, the advantages to retiring here, especially in Tbilisi, is that there's great food and wine. The capital city has a lot of hot springs to explore, which I love personally, and gaining residency means you can take advantage of a 1% tax rate. When it comes to the healthcare options in Georgia, most people do decide to get private insurance. Now, you can either get local or international insurance if you want. Both can have some good rates. Now, you can get good healthcare services in Tbilisi specifically. However, the facilities probably aren't going to really impress any of us Americans. However, their facilities are improving over the years. And now, how about the fourth country that you can retire cheap you might not have thought of? Croatia. Now, if you want to chase beaches in retirement, Croatia might have one of the coolest beaches on earth with Zlatni Rat Beach. Due to the wind and the tidal changes, it actually changes shape over time. If you want to live there, you should definitely check out Dubrovnik and its 13th century walls lining the Adriatic Sea and encompassing a city full of interesting architecture, yummy food, and historical sites. When it comes to the retirement programs, Croatia is another country that doesn't technically have a retirement visa, but they do have a temporary residence option that can be accessed in 3 ways, including prepayment of your rent, owning a property in Croatia, or volunteering within the country. For the prepayment of rent option, you need to show that you have prepaid at least 1 year of rent. Now, you can get this through a contract. And side note, I have heard that some landlords might be willing to work with you and not take the full prepayment of the rent, but still say that they did in the contract and then just take it in monthly payments. That might be an option, so you could look into that theoretically. Now, if you're going to go the owning of the property route, you actually have to own the property and live in the property at the same time to use that function. And the last option would be the volunteering option, which can be a visa that you get for up to a year. However, if your volunteering contract is shorter than that, then also your visa will comply with that length. So some of the benefits of retiring in Croatia is that it has a pretty low cost of living for that region of the world. Plus, if you want to go the owning of property route, there is no minimum value on the property that you have to own. So it might be a really good place to get yourself a home base at a really good value compared to some other countries where they're going to require you to put in 6 figures or more on a property. Now, when it comes to the healthcare options within Croatia, there are both public and private options available, and they seem to be reasonable in price, and the healthcare itself seems to meet international standards. Now let's fly back across the ocean over to the fifth country where you can retire cheap that you might not have thought of, Guatemala. There are lots of things that could draw you to retire in Guatemala, such as a vibrant capital city, picturesque lakes, or a rich culture that basically runs on delicious coffee. You might want to hike jungles in search of one of Guatemala's many waterfalls, surf the Pacific Ocean, or just find yourself back in time under the shadow of ancient Mayan ruins. Guatemala is full of natural and man-made beauty just waiting to be explored. When it comes to retiring cheap in Guatemala, they have the perfect retirement visa called the Pensionado visa. All this requires is that you are showing a minimum income of $1,250 per month, and you must show that you actually intend to stay in Guatemala. So one of the coolest things about Guatemala is its combination of being a low cost of living place plus having tons of nature to explore. Now, when it comes to actually living there, you can initially stay for 5 years on your visa, plus that can be extended. When it comes to the healthcare services available in Guatemala, they do have both public and private services available. Now, you're probably going to want to get private healthcare in Guatemala because sometimes you might be using a public service, but then a procedure that they need to do is going to be referred to a private clinic. So having that private insurance is really going to help out. Plus, the best hospitals are going to be found in the major cities, and you're unlikely to find like really good services in small rural towns. Now let's discuss the sixth place to retire cheap that you might not have thought of, and that's Estonia. As one of the safest, most technologically efficient, and least known countries in Europe, I can see Estonia being a great place to hide away and retire in the future. I could disappear in Tallinn with its population of over 430,000 people, or possibly maroon myself on one of its many populated islands and live a life of peace. Now, when it comes to retiring in Estonia, they're another one of those countries that don't have necessarily a retirement visa, but they do have their long stay D visa. Now, this will initially grant you a stay of up to a year, and this can be renewed, but you can only stay up to 548 days within a 730-day period within Estonia. And they're asking for a little bit more of a retirement income at least 2,100 euros per month. So some of the benefits of retiring in Estonia is that it's a country known for being very clean, both in terms of its air and its streets. You might also enjoy that in the capital city you can get free public transport, plus it's just a low cost of living place in a very safe and beautiful nation. Now when it comes to the healthcare options, this is where it really shines because it does have first-rate medical care with both public and private options available for you, and it's a very well-regarded system that's known for its reasonable prices. Now let's talk about the seventh country to retire cheap that you might not have thought of, and that would be Cambodia. Whether you want the city life of Phnom Penh, or an ocean view apartment in Sihanoukville, or maybe you just want to relax in a low-key lifestyle on the streets of Battambang, Cambodia has a lot to offer and is often overlooked, but it's a great place to retire because it has an easy-to-use retirement visa program that doesn't require a high income. Now, retiring in Cambodia is super easy and everybody knows this. They have the ER visa, which is basically the Cambodian retirement visa. You just need to show that you're at least 55 years old, and they don't have a specific minimum income for you, but generally they ask that you have at least $1,000 to $1,500 coming in each month. It just depends on where you're applying, which agency, etc. Now, in terms of the benefits of retiring here, this is going to give you residency for 1 year, and it's easy to renew annually and then stay indefinitely. Frankly, it's just one of the easiest retirement visas to get, and while you're there, you can own property, and you can also purchase things like motorcycles or cars. It's just a cool place to integrate yourself quite easily. When it comes to the healthcare in Cambodia, there are both public and private options available. You can get onto the public healthcare option by paying a tax into that system. Now, that system has been strengthening and improving over time throughout the country, but the major cities are definitely going to have the best hospitals and the best doctors. And I know that for maybe some super major surgeries, some people end up actually flying to Bangkok for some better hospitals over there. Now, if you want some adventure, plus you want to retire cheap in Central America, consider the eighth country that you might not have thought of to retire cheap, and that's Nicaragua. Now, when I think of Nicaragua, I think of their double volcano island in the middle of a freshwater lake teeming with trapped bull sharks. I think of the food stalls lining the cobblestone streets of Leon, and I remember idyllic waves and bioluminescent nights on the Pacific Ocean. To me, it just feels like a good place to retire. Now, as for the retirement programs in Nicaragua, they have a really good one called the Pensionado visa. You can actually retire once you're 45 years old. You only have to show a minimum income of about $600 per month, and you can actually include your dependents on that as well. Just you need to show an extra $150 per month in income for each one. Now, if you're not 45 years old yet, you can actually apply for the Rentista visa, which means you just have to show about $750 a month in income through things like investments or rent payments. So some of the benefits of retiring in Nicaragua is that it's actually a really low cost of place to live. Of course, that's why it's on the list. You can also buy your own property there, and there is a quick path to citizenship if you're looking for it. As for the healthcare services within Nicaragua, again, public and private options are available. Most expats choose to use the private healthcare options for better services. Emergency care in Nicaragua is generally free, but you might find limited services in that respect. And that leads us to our ninth place to retire on a budget that you might not have thought of that actually has fantastic healthcare services, and that's Malaysia. Malaysia is a beautiful country filled with high-quality services, English-speaking locals, and low cost of living havens. Now, Malaysia used to be a retirement haven as well, then it wasn't for a while when they redacted their retirement visa, then the visa made a comeback after being revamped. here is now what they offer in this low-cost country that you might have forgotten about. Now, of course, the visa we're talking about is the My Malaysia Second Home, or MM2H visa, that's finally back in circulation. And there are basically 4 tiers that you can join from. That's the Special Economic Zone, the Silver, the Gold, and the Platinum tiers. So each have their own financial requirements, but the minimum age that you can retire on this is just 21 years old. So really cool for anyone who wants to retire young, but you're also going to have to show a minimum deposit of at least $32,000, which goes up depending on which tier you're in. Furthermore, and this was a topic of hot debate in Malaysia, was should they force people on this visa to buy property? And in fact, yes, they are requiring that, and you have to hold your property for at least 10 years. Now, as for the benefits, that's actually kind of a benefit that they require you to buy a property because now you have an investment in that country as well, but you can also include your dependents over on this visa, and there are some potential tax-friendly advantages to using this program. Now, when it comes to the healthcare options available in Malaysia, you can use both international and local healthcare services within their system. There is a high-quality healthcare system available, which is really nice, even so much so that it actually brings in medical tourism into the country. So it sounds like a pretty smart place to retire. Now, if you're interested in some other cheap places to retire, consider these countries right here.